cetaceans we see today are the cumulative evolutionary product of the dynamic biogeography of the past. Their origins began 55 million years ago, when the most primitive cetaceans, the Archaeocetae, were forced out of the Tethys Ocean and into new ecospaces. These newly accessible niches allowed the radiation of the two groups we see today, baleen whales and toothed whales. To tell the full story of how, we must go back in time and dive into that changing ocean. The breakup of Gondwana began 180 million years ago. New Zealand first broke off from Antarctica and Australia 80 to 60 million years ago. By the late Paleocene, Australia had also started to split off from Antarctica, but it wasn't until the Eocene-Oligocene boundary that ocean circulation started to change drastically. By now, Australia had completely broken off and there was a significant cooling in Antarctica. This continent-scale glaciation produced sea ice, which in turn led to very briny waters at its margins. This very salty water sank and began to spread out, forming Antarctic bottom water, and initiated the global circulation patterns we see today. Evidence for this can be seen in work done on diatoms and foraminifera. The newly formed cold bottom water pushed warmer, nutrient-rich water to the surface, creating huge areas of high productivity. The eutrophication of the Southern Ocean had a heavy influence on radiation of the first group of whales, which we will investigate. Fossil evidence suggests a high diversity and high disparity in mysticetes as they adapted to life in these newly productive waters. The disparity of these early mysticetes is exhibited in the range of different morphologies and feeding methods that they had. Their evolution has been described as a stepwise evolution, which would ultimately lead to the baleen whales of today. The first step were the mammalodonts in the late Eocene. They had well-developed teeth believed to be used for raptorial and sieving type feeding. Then there are Aetiocetes, which also appeared in the late Eocene. They too had teeth and lacked baleen. Fossilized teeth of Aetiocetes exhibit abrasion patterns that suggest they fed by sucking in prey before using interlocking teeth to strain out the water. The same abrasion patterns are seen in walrus today, who use this technique. You may wonder why Aetiocetes and mammalodonts are grouped with baleen whales when they lack baleen, but they share traits such as a short rostrum, reduced premaxilla, and eye orbits positioned up and back on the skull. These traits, called synapomorphies, are defining characteristics of baleen whales. It was during the early Oligocene that the most prominent synapomorphy of baleen whales evolved, baleen. It appeared in a group called Eomysticetes. Baleen is made of keratin, which hangs down from the upper jaw. Similar to the interlocking teeth of the Aetiocetes, it allows water to be strained out while leaving the food behind. Baleen has a larger surface area, which makes it more efficient. Baleen does not fossilize, but other structures in the skull suggest it was present in Eomysticetes. Their skulls suggest they were unable to lunge feed like modern mysticetes, and probably used suction to catch small prey from the water column before sieving it through their baleen. Mysticetae also appeared in the early Oligocene. They only had baleen, which was used to bulk filter feed. This involves gulping, rather than sucking, large amounts of water into the mouth before filtering out small zooplankton through the baleen. They then used their tongue to scrape the trapped prey out of the baleen fibres. All extant baleen whales belong to this lineage. By the mid-Oligocene, South America had separated from Antarctica, creating the Drake Passage and forming the strong Antarctic circumpolar current we observe today. The currents and consequent nutrient upwelling resulted in strong selection of baleen and bulk filter feeding. From this point, we see a large taxonomic diversity of mysticetes appearing, but a lower overall disparity. The drop in disparity can be attributed to the extinction of the earlier groups.
What about the other group of whales which live in the ocean along with the baleen whales, the odontocetes, or toothed whales?
Well, let me tell you. Their evolution is directly linked to that of the baleen whales. They separated from each other around 40 million years ago. As the early baleen whales began to dominate the photic zone, odontocetes were forced to delve deeper into the oceans to find a new niche. There is a key distinction between the two diverged groups. Mysticetes have 2 blowholes and odontocetes only have 1. The loss of a blowhole allowed the odontocete's skull to accommodate a fatty lump of tissue called a melon. The melon helps emit a focused beam of sound which will bounce off an object and return to the whale. This is called echolocation. The whales can use the properties of this returning sound to detect prey and interpret their surroundings. In this way, the toothed whales could hunt in the deep ocean away from the competition from the early baleen whales. And so we see that the changing continents influence the evolution of whales, particularly baleen whales. When asked about cetacean evolution, leading world expert in cetacean paleobiology Professor Ewan Fordyce told us that the late Eocene, early Oligocene origin and radiation of baleen whales is closely linked to the evolution of modern Southern Ocean circulation, climate change and plankton abundance. Thus, the largest animals came to feed on tiny prey. The cetaceans we see today, the interlocking teeth of the Aetiocetes. It strains water.